You're fired. Faith Johnson stares at her manager in disbelief. 7 months pregnant. Perfect attendance. One of the company's best employees. And she's being fired in front of everyone. The manager doesn't even try to hide his disgust. This company needs professionals, not single mothers looking for sympathy. Employees watch. Nobody speaks. Faith's eyes fill with tears, but she refuses to cry. She picks up her things and starts walking out. Then a voice cuts through the office. I don't think that's necessary. Everyone turns. A tall Korean man has just entered the building. The manager rolls his eyes, until the company owner rushes forward and bows. Mr. Kang, we weren't expecting you today. The office goes silent. The new owner has arrived. Kang Joon-seo's eyes move to Faith, then to the necklace around her neck. And suddenly, the color drains from his face. Welcome to Afro-Seoul Stories, Soulmates. Please like, share, and subscribe. Faith had been at Meridian Solutions for 4 years. 4 years of early mornings and late evenings, and hitting every target that came her way. She was 27 years old, and she loved her job, and she had never once given Richard Holt a reason to look at her the way he was looking at her right now. Like she was something he had been waiting to remove. Effective immediately, he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. Your access will be revoked by end of day. Faith did not move. Richard. She kept her voice level. What exactly did I do wrong? He shifted. Performance issues. I closed the Hargrove account 3 weeks ahead of deadline. There are other concerns. Name one. His eyes dropped to her stomach. Just for a second. But she caught it. And she understood. She had watched him do this before. Twice, to 2 other women. Both of them had packed their things quietly and left, and nobody had made noise about it, because that was what happened when you did not have the kind of power that made people listen. She had told herself she was different. She had 4 years of proof sitting in the system. She had the numbers. She had the record. She had been wrong. Her throat tightened. She thought about her rent. About the hospital appointments stacked up over the next 8 weeks. About the nursery she had been slowly putting together. This job was not her whole life, but it was how her life ran. And losing it right now, at 7 months pregnant, alone, felt like something collapsing under her feet. But she did not cry. She turned to her desk and started picking up her things. Slowly, deliberately, letting the whole room see that she was not broken. This company needs professionals, Richard said behind her. Louder now. Performing for the audience he had created. Not single mothers looking for sympathy. The floor went silent. Faith stopped. She turned around and looked at him. She looked at him without saying a single word, long enough that his confidence started to crack at the edges. Then she picked up her bag and walked toward the exit. She was not going to give him anything else. I don't think that's necessary. The voice came from behind her, near the elevator bank. Calm and even and not particularly loud, but it stopped the room completely. Everyone turned. A man was standing just inside the entrance. Korean. Tall. Dark coat. He was looking at Richard with an expression that was not quite anger. It was something cooler than anger. The look of someone who has seen something wrong and is already deciding what to do about it. Richard blinked. Sir, this is a personnel matter, and I'm in the middle of... Mr. Kang. The company owner, Mr. Davies, had appeared from somewhere near the back offices. He was already moving fast, already adjusting his jacket. We weren't expecting you today. If I had known, that's fine. The man, Kang Joon-seo, glanced at Davies once. Then his eyes moved across the room. They landed on Faith. Then they dropped to the necklace at her throat. And something happened to his face. A stillness. Sudden and complete. Like someone had paused him. He stared at that necklace for 2 full seconds. Then he looked at her face. What is the situation here? He asked. He fired me. Faith said clearly. Without cause. Joon-seo looked at Richard. Richard's jaw tightened. Mr. Kang, with respect, I have full authority over personnel decisions in my department, and based on documented performance concerns I've made the call to dash. Reverse it. A long beat. We'll discuss the documentation separately. Richard's face moved through several expressions before it settled into something tight and controlled. Yes, sir. Faith stood in the middle of the office with her bag in her hand and felt nothing for a few seconds. Then she felt everything at once and did not know what to do with any of it, so she turned around and walked back to her desk and sat down and opened her laptop. She was not grateful. She did not know this man. She had not asked for his help. And now every person in this office was going to spend the rest of the week thinking she needed saving. She hated that. Her colleague Adiz leaned over. You okay? I'm fine. Faith, I'm fine, Ada. Thank you. Adiz nodded and turned back to her screen. Across the room, Joon-seo disappeared down the executive hallway with Davies. Richard went to his office without making eye contact with anyone. The floor slowly returned to normal. Faith stared at her screen and pressed her hands flat on her desk until they stopped shaking. She got through the rest of the day the same way she had gotten through the past 5 months. 1 hour at a time. Eyes forward. Keep moving. But when she got home that evening and closed the front door behind her, and the apartment was quiet the way it was always quiet now, she stopped. She set her bag down on the kitchen counter. She stood there in the middle of her kitchen and looked at the small framed photograph on the counter. Minwo at a street fair in Brooklyn, laughing at something just out of frame, completely himself, completely unaware she was taking the picture. She had almost taken it down. Twice. She had picked it up and turned it face down, and then picked it up again and put it back. She could not bring herself to put it away. Her feet were hurting. Her back had been aching since the morning. She pulled out a chair and sat down heavily at the kitchen table and put her hands on her belly and just breathed for a moment. 7 months pregnant. Alone. And today she had almost lost her job. The tears came then. Not the controlled kind she allowed herself occasionally, 10 minutes in the shower and then move on. The real kind. The ugly kind. The kind that had been building for 5 months and today had found a crack to come through. She folded her arms on the table and put her head down and cried properly. She cried about the firing. She cried about the way Richard had looked at her stomach like it was evidence of a mistake she had made. She cried about walking back to her desk in front of everyone and pretending she was fine. She cried about doing all of it alone, carrying all of it alone, building a whole life alone, because the person who was supposed to be here had decided one ordinary morning to stop calling and had never explained why. Why did you leave? She said out loud, to the photograph, to the empty apartment, to nobody. The apartment did not answer. She sat up, wiped her face, looked at the photograph. Minwo was still laughing in it, still completely himself. He looked like someone who had never left anyone in his life. I needed you, she said quietly. I still need you, and you're not here. And I don't understand why. She sat there for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called her sister. Blessing answered on the second ring, the way she always did, like she had been waiting. Talk to me. And Faith told her everything. The firing, the stranger who had reversed it, the way Richard had looked at her belly, the way she had walked back to her desk. She told it all in order, and Blessing listened without interrupting, which was unusual for Blessing, and Faith knew that meant her sister understood this was serious. When she finished, there was a short silence. I'm booking a flight, Blessing said. You don't have to. Faith. Blessing, I'm okay. You just cried for 20 minutes while telling me you were fired for being pregnant, and you're telling me you're okay. I didn't cry for 20 minutes. You absolutely did. I counted. A pause. How are you really? Faith looked at the photograph. Tired, she said honestly. I'm so tired of doing this by myself. Blessing was quiet for a moment. Have you heard from him? No. Not even once. Not once, Blessing. 5 months. Nothing. Her voice tightened. He knew about the baby. He held my hand when I told him. He was happy. And then 2 months later he just stopped. She pressed her lips together. I keep looking for the thing I did wrong. I keep going back through everything trying to find the moment I pushed him away, and I can't find it. I can't find anything. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong. Then why did he leave? Blessing did not have an answer for that. I'm angry at him, Faith said, and then stopped. Like saying it out loud had surprised her. I'm actually angry. Not just sad. I'm angry that he knew about this baby and chose to disappear. I'm angry that I defended him to you for months. I'm angry that I still have his photograph on my counter and I can't put it away. Her voice broke slightly. I'm angry that I still love him and he doesn't care enough to even send one message. You're allowed to be angry, Blessing said. I know. No. I mean really. You're allowed. He left you pregnant and alone and disappeared without a word. Being sad about that is too generous. Be angry. Faith exhaled. Long and unsteady. I just want to understand. That's all I want. I just want someone to explain to me what happened. I know, Blessing said softly. I know, my love. They stayed on the phone for another hour. Blessing made her eat something. Made her drink water. Made her promise to call if anything else happened. When they finally hung up, Faith felt emptier and somehow lighter at the same time. The way you feel after you have put something down that you have been carrying too long. She got up, washed her face, made tea, stood at the kitchen window, and looked at the street below. Then she went to bed and lay on her side with her hand on her belly and told her baby that everything was going to be fine. She had no idea if that was true, but she said it anyway, because that was what you did. The next morning, Joon-seo arrived at the office early. He had not slept well. He had sat in the hotel room with the lights low and thought about a silver necklace and the calculation he did not want to do, but could not stop doing. 7 months pregnant. Minwo had left New York 5 months ago. 2 months into the pregnancy, Minwo had known. He pressed his thumb against his palm in the dark and thought about his brother sitting in this city, knowing he was sick, knowing there was a baby coming, and saying nothing to the woman who loved him. Choosing silence over and over until Joon-seo came and brought him home, and he died within 2 weeks of leaving. He had not told her. He had left her believing he had chosen to go. Joon-seo pulled Faith's employment file first thing in the morning. He read it carefully. For years of exceptional performance. Not a single disciplinary note. 3 separate commendations from senior leadership. Client satisfaction scores that were the highest in her department consistently. There was nothing in this file that justified termination. Then he read Holt's file. Small things. Expense claims that did not line up cleanly. A supplier contract renewed without proper dual sign-off. A restructuring proposal from 8 months ago that had quietly moved 2 senior analysts out of the department during a period of loose oversight. Both had left the company shortly after. One had raised a concern about expense discrepancies before she left. The concern had gone nowhere. Joon-seo put the files down. He called his forensic accountant. I need a full audit of the New York office. One department specifically. Everything connected to a Richard Holt. Thorough and quiet. 10 days. Make it 9. He sat back and looked at the ceiling. He needed to approach Faith carefully. He could not walk up to her and say what he knew without being certain. And being certain meant spending time near her, asking questions that seemed natural, watching and listening. He was not going to rush this. There was too much at stake. He just had to be patient. Holt, meanwhile, was not patient at all. The moment Joon-seo had reversed the firing the previous day, something had shifted in Holt's eyes. Joon-seo had caught it briefly before Holt composed himself. Not just annoyance at being overruled. Something sharper. Something that looked like fear. Over the next few days, Joon-seo watched Holt the way he watched all problems. Quietly and thoroughly. Holt was arriving early and leaving late. His office door was closed more than it had ever been. He was on his computer constantly, and not in the way of someone catching up on legitimate work. He was moving things. Joon-seo's IT contact confirmed it within 3 days. Unusual file deletion activity. Permission changes that did not correspond to any authorized project. He was covering tracks, and he was doing it quickly because he knew time was running out. He was also watching Faith. Joon-seo noticed that too. The way Holt's eyes tracked her when she moved through the office. The way he found small reasons to criticize her work in the daily team meetings, nothing big enough to escalate, just constant low-level pressure. A duplicate invoice she had flagged correctly was overridden without explanation. A project she had been leading was quietly reassigned to a junior colleague without any announcement. He was trying to make her uncomfortable enough to leave on her own. Joon-seo made a note of every single instance. He also spent those 2 weeks finding reasons to speak to Faith. Brief and professional. How are you settling back in? Is there anything you need from the management side? He kept it light and watched how she responded. She was polite and measured and careful, which made complete sense. A stranger had reversed her firing, and she had no idea why, and she was not the kind of person who accepted unexplained things comfortably. He liked that about her. It reminded him of Minwo, actually. Minwo had always needed to understand things. Had always asked the second and third question even when the first answer seemed sufficient. On the 3rd week she came to him. She knocked on the conference room door on a Wednesday afternoon and walked in without fully waiting for an answer. I want to understand what's happening, she said. She sat across from him. Her hands were folded on the table. She was not fidgeting. Can you be more specific? You've been here 3 weeks. That's not normal for an ownership visit. There's a lot to review. You keep appearing near my department. And Richard has been strange since you arrived. She looked at him directly. He overrode a duplicate invoice flag I raised last week without any explanation. I went back and checked. The original payment was processed 6 months ago. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Joon-seo looked at her. There are 2 or 3 other things I noticed over the past few months, she continued. Small things. Not my area, so I didn't feel it was my place to push. But they didn't add up. She paused. Is there an audit happening? Yes. Is it about Richard? What made you decide to come and ask me directly? Because he reassigned my project this morning without telling me. No email. No meeting. Just gone from my dashboard. Her voice was level, but her eyes were sharp. He's trying to push me out through the back door since he couldn't do it through the front. And I want to know if you're going to let that happen. No, Joon-seo said. I'm not. She held his gaze. Then tell me what I can do to help. Write down everything you noticed. Every discrepancy. Every moment something didn't add up. Dates, amounts, anything specific you remember. And then let me handle the rest. She studied him for a moment. Then she nodded and stood. She was at the door when she stopped and turned back. Mr. Kang, why are you really still here? The accounting review should have been done in a week. He looked at her across the room. He was not ready. She was not ready. There was a right way to do this, and he had not found it yet. I'm working through some things, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she left. 3 days later, Holt made his biggest mistake. He went into the system after hours and deleted a full approval chain on a supplier payment from 14 months ago. He did it from his office computer. He did not know that Joon-seo's IT team had flagged his account for monitoring. They had a full record of everything he touched. The next morning, Joon-seo received the preliminary audit findings. 18 months of skimming. Inflated supplier invoices through a personal contact. Duplicate payments processed during periods of low oversight. Expense claims attached to projects that did not exist. Total amount, just over $200,000. He also had Holt's deletion activity from the previous night, time-stamped and documented. Joon-seo took everything to Davies that afternoon. Davies went pale reading through it. I had no idea. I know. He was careful about when and how he moved things. You weren't looking for it. Joon-seo set another document on the table. I want Faith Johnson formally reinstated with written confirmation that her termination was improper. Full back pay for any disruption. A written apology from the company addressed directly to her. Of course, Davies said quietly. Holt was called in the next morning. He arrived composed. He had clearly spent the night preparing himself to talk his way through whatever was coming. He could not talk his way through documented evidence. Joon-seo's legal team walked him through the audit findings line by line, and by the end of it the composure was completely gone. What was left underneath was just a man who had been taking things for a long time and had finally run out of room to hide. He was escorted from the building. The police were contacted. The company communication went out that same afternoon. By the time Faith received her personal letter from Davies, the whole office already knew most of it. She read the letter twice. Her reinstatement. Her cleared record. The company's formal apology. She set it down on her desk and looked at the window for a long moment. Then she knocked on the conference room door. Thank you, she said when she came in. You gave me what I needed. You looked when nobody else would have. She sat down. I want to ask you something. Go ahead. The necklace. She touched it briefly, automatically. You stared at it when you walked in that first day. You went still. I noticed, and I didn't say anything, but I noticed. He looked at her. Who are you, she said. Not your title. Who are you to me? Because there is something. I can feel it, and I would like you to just tell me what it is. He had been trying to find the right way to say this for 3 weeks. He had not found a perfect version. There was not one. The man who gave you that necklace, he said quietly. His name was Minwo. Faith's breath stopped. How do you know that name? Because he was my younger brother. She stared at him. He watched her process it. Watched her eyes move from his face to his hands and back. Watched her putting it together piece by piece. Her mind working fast, even as her body went completely still. She said. The word came out very quietly. Yes. Minwo is dead. The word sat between them. Yes, Joon-seo said. He passed away 5 months ago. In Seoul. She pressed her lips together hard. He was sick, Joon-seo said. He had cancer. He fought it for about 4 months before he died. He didn't tell you he was sick. He didn't tell you because he didn't know how to. And by the time I got him to Seoul for treatment, he only had weeks left. Faith looked at the table. He waited. He didn't leave me, she said. No. She exhaled. Shaky and long. He had cancer. Yes. And he still didn't tell me. Her voice changed on that. The softness hardened slightly. He let me spend 5 months thinking I did something wrong. He let me spend 5 months thinking he looked at me and this baby and decided we weren't worth staying for. Her jaw tightened. He knew he was sick and he knew about the baby, and he chose to say nothing. Yes, Joon-seo said. He did not defend it. It was not defensible. Why? Her voice cracked on the word. Not soft. Sharp. He didn't want you to stay because you felt you had to. He didn't want to be someone you pitted. He thought he was protecting you from watching him get worse. That was not his choice to make. She stood up suddenly. That was not his decision. I had a right to know. This baby had a right to know its father was alive and sick and needed us. She turned away from him, pressing her hand against her mouth. He took that from us. He took those months. I could have been there. She stood at the window with her back to him. He said nothing. He let her feel it. After a while she turned back around. Her eyes were red. Her face was set. He asked you to find me. Yes. Before he died. He made me promise. And it took you 5 months. Yes. He held her gaze. I was grieving badly. That is not an excuse. It is just the truth. I tried twice and stopped both times. And then I walked into this office and saw the necklace, and I have been trying to find the right way to tell you ever since. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat back down. Did he leave anything? She said. Her voice was quieter now. Still raw but quieter. Yes. A box. Letters, photographs, recordings. He made them for you. Some for the baby too. He paused. He had hope, even at the end. He held on to it. She nodded slowly. I'll have it couriered to you, he said. You should have it privately. You don't need me there for that. She looked at him, and something in her face shifted. Like she had not expected that. Like she had been braced for him to insert himself, and he had not. Thank you, she said quietly. The box arrived on a Thursday evening. Faith heard the buzzer from her kitchen and went down to collect it herself. It was a plain brown courier box, not large, addressed to her in handwriting she did not recognize. Joon-seo's, she assumed. She carried it upstairs, set it on the coffee table, sat on the floor in front of it. She looked at it for a while before she opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope with her name on it. Faith. Just Faith, in Minwo's handwriting, and seeing it made her chest contract sharply. There was a USB drive, 3 photographs, and a small cream envelope that had no name on it, but was sealed carefully, like whatever was inside had been put there with intention. She opened the photographs first. The 2 of them at Coney Island last summer. She remembered that day. It had rained, and they had stayed anyway, and eaten soggy funnel cake and laughed about it for weeks afterward. Minwo had his arm around her, and they were both squinting against the light. She looked at his face for a long time. The second photograph was one she had never seen. Minwo alone, sitting in what looked like a hospital garden. He was thinner than she remembered. The sun was on his face, and his eyes were closed. Whoever had taken it had caught him in a private moment. Peaceful, but thin. She set it down carefully. The third photograph was of the 2 of them again. This one she recognized immediately. The night they had gone to that gallery opening his friend had dragged him to. The one where they had both stood in front of a large piece of abstract art and quietly admitted to each other that they had no idea what they were looking at. Someone had taken it without them noticing. They were looking at each other, not the camera, and Minwo was smiling in the way he smiled when something genuinely pleased him. She had not known this photograph existed. She pressed it against her chest for a moment. Then she picked up the USB drive, carried it to her laptop, and plugged it in. One video file. She opened it. Minwo appeared on the screen. He was sitting in the hospital garden from the photograph. The same thin face. The same sunlight. He was looking directly into the camera, and he looked like himself, tired and thinner, but completely himself, and seeing him move and blink and breathe after 5 months of stillness in photographs made her cover her mouth with both hands. He cleared his throat. Faith, he said. His voice. His actual voice. I have been trying to start this video for 3 days, he said. I keep starting it and stopping it because I don't know where to begin. So I'm just going to talk. And you can be angry at me. You're allowed. I think I would be angry too. She was already crying. I was going to propose to you, he said. I want you to know that first. I had the ring. I had the restaurant booked. I had the whole evening planned, and I was getting ready in my apartment, and I fainted. He paused. Just dropped. Right there next to my dresser. And when I woke up in the hospital, they told me I had cancer. Faith stared at the screen. I didn't tell you that night, he said. I told myself I needed time to understand it first. Then I told myself I would tell you when I knew more about the treatment options. Then I told myself I would tell you when I felt steadier. And then you called me that Thursday evening and told me you were pregnant. His voice changed. Softer. Completely different. Faith. When you told me. He stopped. Looked down for a second. Then back up. I had to sit down. My legs just stopped working. Not because of the illness. Just because of you. Because of us. Because you were telling me that there was going to be a person. Our person. He pressed his lips together. That night, I could not sleep. I lay there and I thought about everything. What they would look like. What kind of person they would become. What I wanted to teach them. What I wanted to be for them. She pressed her hand harder against her mouth. And then I thought about the cancer, he said. And I made a decision that I think was wrong. I think even then I knew it was wrong. But I made it anyway because I was scared and I did not know what else to do. He looked directly at the camera. I didn't want you to stay because you felt you had to. I didn't want to be the sick person you sacrificed for. I wanted to be the man you chose because you wanted him, not because he needed saving. He shook his head slowly. I know, Faith. You're angry. You should be. I took something from you that you had every right to. I took those months. I took the chance to be there. And I am sorry. I am more sorry than I know how to say in a video with a time limit. She was crying openly now, sitting on the floor of her living room surrounded by his photographs, talking to a screen. Joon-seo brought me back to Seoul, he said. I didn't want to go. I fought him about it for 2 weeks because going meant leaving, and leaving meant you would think I chose to go. And I couldn't explain without telling you everything. So I left. And I hated myself for it every single day. He paused. The baby, he said. I want to talk about the baby. He leaned forward slightly. If she's a girl, I have a name. I've been keeping it since I was maybe 23 years old, waiting for the right person to give it to. Sora. It means sky in Korean. I want her to be wide and free and full of light. Like her mother. Faith laughed. Just briefly. A wet, broken laugh. If it's a boy, Minwo said, I trust you. You have better judgment than me about most things. We've established that. She laughed again. Harder this time. And then cried harder too. I want you to know something, he said, and his voice was serious now. I loved you from the moment you stood next to me at that gallery and whispered that the painting looked like someone sneezed on a canvas. I loved you every single day after that. I loved you when you found out you were pregnant and you were so calm about it, and I was the one falling apart. I loved you when I was in Seoul, and I was sick and I was missing you, and I couldn't call, because calling would have meant explaining everything. He looked at the camera. I never left you, he said. I want you to know that. I never chose to leave. I ran out of time. There is a difference, and I need you to know the difference. He was quiet for a moment. I asked Joon-seo to find you, he said. My brother. He's difficult and he's uncomfortable with feelings, and he will probably deliver this box with no expression on his face whatsoever. A small smile. But he is the best person I know, and I asked him to take care of you. Not because you need taking care of. You don't. You're the most capable person I have ever met, and you will be a wonderful mother, and you will figure everything out. The smile faded into something more serious. I asked him because I needed to know you weren't alone. I needed to know someone who loved me was also near you. Near our baby. He sat back. I'm sorry I didn't say all of this to your face, he said. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder to stay. I'm sorry the last thing I gave you was silence when you deserved so much more than that. He pressed his hand to his chest briefly. But I loved you. Completely. Without reservation. And wherever I am still so proud that you are the mother of my child. He looked at the camera one more time. Name her Sora, he said softly. Let her be the sky. The video ended. Faith sat on the floor for a long time. She did not try to stop crying. She did not try to manage it or put it away. She just sat there and let it move through her. All of it. The grief and the anger and the relief and the love and the sadness of 5 months of misunderstanding finally coming apart. He had not left her. He had never left her. She picked up the photograph from the gallery. The one where they were looking at each other. She held it in both hands and looked at his face and said, I'm naming her Sora. The apartment was quiet. But it felt different now. Not empty. Just quiet. Sora arrived 6 weeks later on a Tuesday morning. Joon-seo was in the waiting room by 4:30 a.m. Faith had called him when her contractions started, not because she had no one else, but because he had asked her to. He had asked quietly, 2 weeks before the due date, if she would let him know when it was time. She had looked at him for a moment and then said yes. He sat in the waiting room with cold coffee and a magazine he did not read, and the specific alertness of someone waiting for something that matters. Blessing arrived at 6 a.m. from Lagos, coat half on, eyes red from the overnight flight, and she grabbed Joon-seo's hand when she saw him and said, "Thank God," in a way that told him Faith had talked about him. Then she disappeared through the double doors. At 10:14, a nurse came out and told him he could come in. He stood at the doorway. Faith was in the bed, exhausted in the way that has its own quiet power, her hair loose around her shoulders. Blessing was beside her, already crying, which seemed to be Blessing's natural response to large emotions. And in Faith's arms was a very small person wrapped in a white blanket. Joon-seo crossed the room slowly. He looked down. Sora had a small, serious face. Dark eyes not yet fully focused, but somehow still attentive. A slight crease in her brow that was not quite a frown. More a concentration. The look of someone paying close attention to a world they had just arrived in. His chest closed. It was Minwo's face. Exactly. On this brand new person who had never met him. "Would you like to hold her?" Faith said. He reached for her before he had fully decided to. She was lighter than he expected and heavier at the same time. He held her against his chest, and she made a small sound and grabbed the edge of his jacket with one tiny fist. He stood there holding his niece and felt something he did not have clean words for. Grief and love and continuity all at once. The feeling of an ending and a beginning happening in the same moment. "Hello," he said quietly, just to her. "I have been wanting to meet you." Sora looked up at him with Minwo's eyes. "She has his frown," Faith said softly. "It's not a frown," Joon-seo said. "It's concentration. He always looked like that when he was paying attention." Faith smiled. "The real one. The one that went all the way." "Sora," she said. "Her name is Sora." 5 months later, Joon-seo drove them to the airport. Faith sat in the back with Sora in the car seat beside her, one hand resting on the baby's stomach the way she always sat when they were in the car. Sora was awake, looking at the window, watching the world go past with the same serious attention she gave everything. The flight to Seoul was long. Sora slept for most of it. Faith sat quietly and looked out the window, and Joon-seo sat beside her and said very little, which was how they both preferred long distances. The burial ground was private. Outside the city, up a slow hill, surrounded by trees that were just beginning to turn. Joon-seo's family had chosen it. Quiet and clean and well-kept, the kind of place where you could hear yourself think. They walked up the path slowly. Joon-seo carried Sora. Faith walked beside him with her hands in her coat pockets and her eyes on the path ahead. Minwo's grave was simple. His name, his dates. Below them, in both Korean and English, a line his mother had chosen from something he had written in the hospital. Faith stopped in front of it and read it. She stood there for a long time. Joon-seo stayed a few steps back, giving her space. Sora looked around at the trees with great interest. After a while, Faith crouched down in front of the stone. She pressed her hand flat against it, the way she had pressed her hand flat against the table in the conference room the day she learned the truth. Steadying herself, staying present. "I got your message," she said quietly. "I heard everything you said." She paused. "She's here. She's 5 months old, and she already has your exact face and your exact frown, and I'm going to have a very difficult time disciplining her because of it." The trees moved. "I named her Sora," she said. "Like you asked." She stayed crouched for another moment. Then she stood up. Joon-seo stepped forward and placed Sora in her arms. Sora looked at the gravestone. Then she reached out one small hand toward it, the way babies reach toward things that interest them, open and unhesitating and completely sure. Faith caught her hand gently, held it. "That's your father," she said. "He loved you before you existed. He was so proud of you." Her voice was steady. "He still is." Joon-seo stood beside them and looked at his brother's name on the stone and felt the grief move through him the way it moved through him now, present and real, but no longer fixed. More like water than stone, something that could be carried without being crushed by it. Minwo had kept his promise. He had loved Faith completely. He had made sure she would not be alone. He had left everything he could before the time ran out. The letters, the recordings, the name he had been saving, and a brother who had been slow and had grieved badly and had finally arrived. He had not abandoned her. He had never abandoned her. He had simply run out of time. And standing on that hillside in Seoul, with his niece reaching toward her father's name and Faith holding her and the trees moving quietly around them, Joon-seo understood something he had not been able to understand before. Love does not stop when the person does. It finds somewhere else to go. It always finds somewhere else to go. Minwo ran out of time, but he never ran out of love. That's the thing about people who love deeply. They find a way to leave it behind, even when they cannot stay. Thank you for watching Afro-Seoul Stories, Soulmates. If this story reached something in you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next episode.